When you fire the shell, that fuse is lit, it flies out a given length of time and explodes. Now, to be a good artilleryman, you had to be good at mathematics. And so when you went through your training at West Point, a great deal of training was on mathematics because you wanted to be able to calculate how far the enemy is and be able to know the flight time of that artillery round so that when you fire that round, it's going to airburst directly above the enemy and scatter the shell, the shrapnel, onto the enemy and inflict maximum casualty. Your last round is a canister round. The canister round is designed to take a 12-pound cannon and turn it into the mother of all shotguns. A canister round contains 36 1-inch balls arranged in a cluster with a powder charge behind it to drive it out of the gun and inflict as many casualties at short range as possible. Canister typically had a range of about 150 to 200 yards. But it was extremely deadly effective. So the mountain howitzer is designed to provide infantry support with these weapons. The only problem with the mountain howitzer is its range did not exceed that of the rifled musket. So if you were a mountain howitzer crew, when you were within range of the enemy, they were within range of you. That is not true of the larger guns, the 12-pound Napoleons, or more importantly, the rifled guns. And if you were a crew of a 12-pound Whitworth battery, you had a range of about 4 miles. So if you could see it, you could shoot at it. Now let's watch some of the artillery as they fire. There's a procedure and process to the artillery. They have a 7-man crew for a gun. The number 1 man is at the front of the gun, and he is going to be responsible for ramming the charge. The number 2 man is going to have a sponge. Now when you fire a pound of powder out of a cannon, that gun is going to start getting very hot. So hot that when you introduce gunpowder down into a hot metal barrel, you have the possibility of it going off well before you want. So what they're going to do is they're going to take a sponge, and they're going to take a wet sponge and sponge out the barrel. That's to cool the barrel down. They're also going to clean out the barrel for any embers and residue from the previous shot. Then they're going to introduce a round to the barrel that is a black powder cartridge with the appropriate type of shell or round ball. At the end of the gun, the number 3 man is going to pick and prime. He has a brass pick designed to penetrate the cartridge so that it exposes the powder, and then he's going to put a primer on there, ready the piece to fire, and the number 4 man is going to pull the lanyard which fires the gun. The number 5 man is the gunner. He is responsible for aiming and making sure the gun is on target. You will usually have a man behind the gunner at the caisson. He is responsible for determining the proper load. And then the last person is the powder monkey who runs the charge from the caisson up to the gunners. And you can see that being operated on the various artillery pieces on the field. Okay, looks like the Confederates are sending forward their skirmishers. Looks like Mr. Grant has deployed a skirmish line, kind of determine what he's up against and testing what's going on. Now the Confederates at Camp Johnson have also gone back and sent for reinforcements, seeing that the Federals have decided to engage. Now typically in the Civil War you're used to seeing soldiers standing shoulder to shoulder, which was the typical formation for infantry. But the infantry was also trained to deploy as skirmishers, and cavalry would also be trained to dismount from their horses deploy as skirmishers. That is to say, to spread themselves thin across an area so that they could cover a larger area, and also to reduce the number of casualties that they're taking. So they'll deploy out, spread themselves out, use the terrain, get down as low as possible to the ground, hide behind any trees or bushes that are available, and deploy themselves in a way to reduce casualties. Now the problem with skirmishing is that you definitely reduce the amount of firepower that you're able to bring onto the enemy. And a formed enemy, firing in formation, is going to be able to beat down your area with a larger amount of firepower, with a larger amount of volume of bullets than what you're able to throw back at them. And thus that's limited the effectiveness of skirmishing. So a lot of people ask, well, why did they stand shoulder to shoulder? Why didn't they spread out? The reason was they wanted to be as effective as possible. And by standing shoulder to shoulder, that increased the firepower. Now remember, we're using a rifled musket. A rifled musket is a single shot weapon. You only have one bullet loaded. The process of loading requires that you open and tear open a cartridge, pour the powder down there, put the bullet, ram the bullet down the barrel, then prime the piece by putting a musket cap on the top, and now finally you're ready to shoot the weapon. So it is not a rapid fire weapon. A good infantryman, well trained, is going to fire about 3 rounds a minute. Now at the far end of the field you see the Federals have brought on their infantry brigade. And there you see the classic formation, shoulder to shoulder, the flag in the middle of an infantry battalion. Federals have also protected their flank by bringing up some Federal cavalry. And it looks like the Confederate cavalry is going to respond to the threat. Now typically cavalry was designed to probe the enemy, do reconnaissance, attack their flanks. So you see the Confederate cavalry coming up on the flank. Now the cavalry is typically armed with a pistol, a short rifle known as a carbine, a cavalry sword, now the problem with the carbine is rather difficult to load while mounted. Again, you have to load it through the muzzle, pour the powder down the muzzle, put the bullet in, ram it home, and doing that on horseback is a bit of a challenge. So, as the Civil War continued, there's going to be a lot of evolution in firepower. Much of it's going to be dedicated to the cavalry. You're going to see a lot of repeated rifles being designed for use by the mounted troops. The Federals are pushing forward their skirmish line. And if you watch some of the Federals on the skirmish line, you'll see the unit being portrayed here as the 8th Illinois. Most of these guys are armed with a Sharps rifle. The Sharps is not a repeater, but it is a breech loader. You open the back of the rifle, put in the round, close the rifle, prime it, and fire. It's a much faster process than the muzzle loading rifle. Okay, looks like everybody's drawing swords, and it looks like we're going to have a cavalry battle. The classic cavalry sword fight was diminishing at the time of the Civil War because Many of the cavalrymen were armed with a carbine or armed with a 6-shot revolver.